Barakinsky states that Sufism is not only a religious movement, but also a literary movement. He names Sufism as a spiritual or religious movement, doctrinal Sufism, Tasawwuf Kitab, while Sufism as a literary movement, poetic Sufism, Tasawwuf Poetic. Poetic Sufism is not a local phenomenon but universal. It's not only limited to Arab or Persian Muslim traditions but also emerges in other traditions such as Turkish, Urdu, Chinese, Malay, and Javanese. Literature as part of human culture also has a mystical style. Islamic mystical poetry for at least the earlier centuries was multifaceted. It began with orisons or simple expressions of asceticism of the earlier Sufis, then turned into pure and brilliant poems which talk about humans' love for God, and eventually, according to Anna-Mary Schimmel, reached its climax in the Odes of Ibn al-Farid. In addition, it was Rumi in Persia who was the forerunner of a special poetic tradition. Rumi's poems occupy a prestigious position of its own, which is full of paradoxes, which also requires special study. That his visions are sometimes implicit or the stories he wrote are paradoxical, according to Schimmel, is a far cry from the complicated but always perfectly measured ideals of poets like Sa'di and Hafiz. Paradoxical poetry is typical of the Sufi poems. It is because of the Sufis inspired by the experience of paradoxical God. For Sufis, poetry is a very vital medium of expression in conveying their experience of transcendent love. To understand how the Sufis express their ecstatic mystical love means affirming that the expressions must be symbolic and metaphorical. As Ibn Arabi said that Gnostics, Ahlul Ma'rifah, cannot convey their feelings to others clearly. They can only express them symbolically. The fact that religious experience always requires symbolic language is also used in the Quran. One of the figurative or metaphorical expressions of the Quran is in Surah An-Nur. God is the light of the heavens and the earth. The parable of his light is a niche, wherein is a lamp. The lamp is in a glass. The glass is a shining star kindled from a blessed olive tree. Neither of the east nor of the west. Its oil would well nigh shine forth, even if no fire had touched it. Light upon light, God guides unto his light whomsoever he will. And God sets forth parables for mankind. And God is knower of all things. Sufis believe that the beauty of a sublime diction has the power to bring a person to the divine realm. Therefore, Abdurrahman Jami stated that Sufi poetry is an allegory of the eternal realm, the content of which is the wisdom gleaned in the divine rose garden or the secret rose garden. Wisdom as one of the forms of the highest spiritual beauty that can be achieved by a Sufi poet is related to aesthetics and divine truth. In the context of what Jami said, he certainly didn't talk about outward beauty which can only be perceived by the five senses. Sufis often describe their mystical experience with God as a love relationship. In relation to it, poetic language as a medium of expression in this case is suitable, since poetic language can not only symbolize God, the most untranslatable, but it can also express intimacy. The relationship between the subject and the object, between the servant and God, is obliterated due to the intimate relationship of love, being the lover and the beloved. For Sufis, love does sustain life from the very beginning when God was about to create creatures. Love is life, die with it. You have the right to die and to be forgiven. The heavens rotate with the waves of love. The world will freeze in the absence of love. In expressing the transcendental experience of love, Rumi chose poetry as the medium of his expressions. Love is an aesthetic experience and it will be effective if it is conveyed through aesthetic utterances as well. In this regard, the Sufi poet states that the vision of and the love for God are embedded in the spiritual heart and the spirits of human since the beginning of creation as a great secret that needs to be revealed. I know that a disciple of Ahmad al-Ghazali developed his teacher's idea that love is the essence of creation. In relation to it, Al-Halat said that the mystical experience, in addition to containing intuitive aspects, contains cognitive aspects of the nature of wujud in it. He also stated that the mystical experience contains creative aspects, so the mystical experience can be an intense stimulus for the creation of high-quality poetry. Indeed, a deep and complex idea acquired through direct spiritual experience can only permeate through and excite the mind and heart of the hearer when conveyed through poetic expressions. Scientific and philosophical language is a dry and rigid discursive language, so it is not easy to inspire and excite feelings. Figurative language, which utilizes all aspects of linguistic aesthetics to achieve the powerful enunciation, more easily ignites the flames of divine love. Said Hussein Nasr explains, the doctrine of imposition of harmony upon the substance of language is to be found in the distinction between form, surah, and meaning, makna, which lies at the heart of the metaphysical teachings of such masters of Sufi poetry, Jalaluddin Rumi. According to this doctrine, everything in the macrocosmic world consists of both an external form, surah, and an inner meaning, makna. This is also true of human language, which has come into being as a result of the imposition of meaning upon the very substance of language or its form. As this impression of meaning upon form increases, the external form becomes more transparent and reveals more readily its inner meaning. With poetry or poetic language in general, this process reaches a higher degree of intensity until, in the case of inspired poetry, meaning dominates totally over form and removes the outward form completely from within, without, of course, destroying the poetic canons. Abdul Hadi, an Indonesian scholar cum poet, explicates the relationship between the divine knowledge, ma'rifah, as well as spiritual love, mahabbah, and aesthetic is very close. In the Sufi tradition, aesthetics is related to metaphysics and the spiritual path they take on the path of Sufism. What is discussed in Sufi aesthetic includes its nature and function, its influence on psychology and human spiritual life, the use of works of art or literature in exciting religiosity and social solidarity, as well as ways of understanding works through hermeneutic methods or ta'wil. The Sufis assert that all good works must be able to be referred to the verses of the Quran, and it is inevitable that their poems are actually a kind of spiritual interpretations of the verses of the Quran, which are transformed into figurative or poetic language. Said Hussein Nasr maintains that Islam itself considers the aspects of divinity, beauty, or aesthetics. It is the aspect of divinity as beauty that is considered the mystical aspect or esoteric dimension of Islam, which is also considered the most beautiful aspects of Islam. Therefore, between Sufism and poetry there is a close relationship. Abu Hamid al-Ghazali emphasized that the vibrations generated from the aesthetic art or literature, such as music or poetry, can ignite the love that is sleeping within the heart, either worldly and sensual love or spiritual and divine love. By conveying their spiritual experiences, the Sufis hope to be able to illuminate their experiences to their readers so that the readers can glean the wisdom contained therein, as the Sufis obtain them. They are inter alia Bayezid Bastami, Al-Hallaj, Abu Sa'id Abul Khair, Umar Al-Khayyam, Hakim Sana'i, Fariduddin Attar, Ibn Arabi, Jalaluddin Rumi, Sa'di Shirazi, Yunus Emre, Mahmud Shabistari, Hafiz Shirazi, Abdurrahman Jami, to mention some. Most of the Sufis mentioned describe the unification of the divine love with figurative or poetic language. The foundation of Sufi poetry is clear. It is based on the religious experience of the Sufis. God as the only one and the only wujud is the foundation of the religiosity of the Sufis. It is clear that Sufism is not only a religious or spiritual movement but also a literary movement. Brakinski calls Sufism as a religious movement doctrinal Sufism and Sufism as a literary movement poetic Sufism. Even though we really realize that the Sufis never intend to create or write poems, and they even deny the significance of poetry, as Rumi expressed. I think of poetic rhyme while my beloved tells me to think of him and nothing else. What are words that thou shouldst think about them? What are words but thorns of the wall of the vineyard? I shall put aside expressions, words and sounds, so that without all three I carry out an intimate discourse with thee. I'll see you next time.